Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Pigskin Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist at the Tuscaloosa News. Joined as always by Travis Reier, the senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. You can get Talkin Tide at our web host at megaphone.com. Also, any podcasting apps you prefer, Apple Podcasts as well, you can get it there. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're all over the place. The Twitter feed is Talkin_Tide. Give us a follow for future drops of the podcast. Travis, we reconvene here after a week off last week under some interesting circumstances. You, for one, not even broadcasting from the homestead.
No. Made the trip up to Minneapolis for the weekend. Met up with the oldest daughter, the middle child, assistant coach, graduate assistant at the University of Nevada, women's basketball. So big gathering of women's basketball coaches. You had the Final Four here in Minneapolis. I was supposed to head home on Sunday. Southwest had other plans overnight on Saturday. They're not a show sponsor, so I can punk them right here if I feel like it.
Right.
And so an extra night in Minneapolis, Goodbread. You know, I tried to get the wife to go watch some Minnesota softball today. She wasn't all that excited about it. So it's been a pretty low-key Sunday in the Twin Cities, Chase.
Just like you, though, to look at the local sports calendar.
Oh, yeah.
You got to stick
well,
around.
You know, we were down there at the awful hotel breakfast this morning, and I saw some folks with the Minnesota softball regalia.
Right.
And so I immediately go to that Minnesota softball schedule, and the Illini were in town, Chase. The Illini. But we didn't make it over there. Yeah, it's a cool town, though. Minneapolis, actually, a cool town. We're kind of in the middle of the main campus for the University of Minnesota, across the Mississippi River. That's the thing that struck me, man. Mississippi River never ends, you know? I mean, we've seen it together down in New Orleans.
As far as you want to go.
During the early hours of mornings, maybe on some occasions. But it's all the way up here too, man.
Yeah.
The old miss, as Clark Griswold once said.
There you go, vacation. All right, jumping into a little bit of Alabama football talk now. Of course, the Crimson Tide just wrapped up the first scrimmage of the spring yesterday as we record here on the Sunday Nighter. They'll be scrimmaging once again next Saturday. Travis, of course, this one closed except to, I guess, family maybe at the most.
Recruits.
And recruits certainly as well. Yeah, we can get into that. Pretty impressive visitors for sure to Bryant-Denny Stadium, but nothing comes out of it publicly really, except for a round of photographs and about 8 minutes with Nick Saban afterwards. And yeah, he had some interesting thoughts. He felt like they turned to the youth quite a bit, sat some starters, sat Will Anderson, etc. So it sounds like youngsters were all over the place. Pre-snap penalties, he said, drop passes, mental errors. I guess that's what you'd expect if you got a lot of freshmen and sophomores on the field.
Absolutely. And it sounds like they got a good look at a couple of those other quarterbacks beyond Bryce Young. So a good day for Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson coming in as an early enrollee. You want to go ahead and get a look at them. Had a couple of offensive line starters out, it sounded like. I would think that Nick was referring to Darian Dalcourt at center, although we saw a lot of Seth McLaughlin down the stretch of the 2021 season, and then perhaps also Emil Ekiyor. So, you know, that changes some things, but you're right. I thought there were some interesting things about what you would expect, some good things and some not so good things. And as much as anything, I think you touched on this, and you know, youth, you want to get a look at those guys. And you also want to go ahead and get an idea of, okay, we've thrown some stuff at some guys that we really haven't had a chance to get a long look at. And these next two scrimmages to go along with Saturday, we're going to see how much of it sticks, which goes back to, can they take the coaching? Can they take the game plan and not only absorb it, but then process the information in a way in which they're effective on the field? And, you know, that allows them as a coaching staff the opportunity to go into fall camp to have a better idea of who the legitimate guys are when you start considering pecking orders, legitimate pecking orders at the different spots. But I thought offensively you probably heard a lot of what you wanted to hear, and some of that probably had to do with Will Anderson sitting out sitting out the scrimmage. And even with that, we did hear Nick Chase mention that pressure continued to be a bit of an issue for the quarterbacks, and we'll see how that plays out moving forward.
Yeah, the offensive line is certainly one of the biggest topics in camp, and so anything Saban says in that regard is going to be sliced and diced. There's no doubt. Kendall Randolph, J.C. Latham, a couple guys getting a look at offensive tackle. Several others. You got the youngster Brockermeyer, Damian George, who of course saw some action toward the end of last season. So a lot going on at that spot. I'm interested to know if some of the interior guys that they're looking at outside, Javian Cohen's a guy they were played guard all year last year. They're looking at. I'm kind of interested to know if they're settled at least on who's playing where, if they haven't figured out who's at the top yet.
I think it's a mix of cross trainers. I think there's probably still Javian Cohen seeing a lot of time at left guard. I think Damian George is a guy who's seeing time inside as well at guard. That being said, we saw J.C. Latham late in the season at guard, and I think he's getting that extended look at tackle now. So, that Kendall Randolph can give you some different things from a depth perspective on the offensive line, and certainly at tight end. But again, when I hear Nick talk about on multiple occasions how pressure is still a concern for that group, it just leads me back to Tyler Steen, the transfer from Vanderbilt, who's expected to make his announcement, his decision known here in the next couple of days, I guess, Chase. And, Alabama's still very squarely in that mix. And right now it's not all that hard to envision Alabama like it's done at running back in this offseason, like it's done at wide receiver and even at corner, visiting the transfer portal to address that need at offensive tackle.
Yeah, Tyler Steen, a guy with more than anything else over anybody Alabama's got, it's experience with him. He started 33 games in his career. He started against two national championship teams. Got a start at left tackle against the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs a couple years earlier. He played right tackle against that unbeaten LSU squad. So he's been through some wars, Travis, and that doesn't necessarily mean you walk in and take the job from somebody else. Maybe he's better than the next guy at Alabama. Maybe he's not, but he's seen more than any of them by a long shot.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go ahead and say Tyler Steen is Jonah Williams or even Alex Leatherwood. I think there are still going to be some questions about Tyler Steen, maybe more so in terms of power. Can he play with the kind of power that we've seen Cam Robinson and some of these tackles at Alabama play with in the past? But as you said, it's undeniable the documented history he has in the best league in all of college football. As you said, you can go to YouTube right now, pull up plenty of Vanderbilt games or clips from the last couple of 3 seasons, and there's Tyler Steen on the field, whether it's right tackle, whether it's left tackle. He's played inside some. So there's certainly a security in knowing, if nothing else, this guy he's capable guy, but he's seen it, in this league, and that means a lot.
No doubt about it. Alabama's offensive line, along with the wide receivers, I think probably the two areas where people are most interested to see how things look for this team on A-Day, which of course will be on Saturday afternoon, as it always is. This year falling on April 16th. Elsewhere around Nick Saban's remarks, Travis, I couldn't help but notice that his comment that the team doesn't have a lot of complainers got a lot of steam, got a lot of pickup in the media. But to me, it was the follow-up to that was more interesting when he noted that having that positive momentum and having all the rah-rah happens a lot at the beginning, right? It's easy to have in the spring. It's easy to have in the summer. Harder to sustain, Nick said, which is code for sometimes you get past Halloween and guys have been sitting on the bench for 8 weeks and it's a little
stale. Gets a little stale.
That's right.
It's like a loaf of bread, and loaf of bread, make some good turkey sandwiches on Monday and Tuesday. You get back around to it Saturday or Sunday,
Yeah.
turn it into croutons for a salad. Maybe some breadcrumbs. What you do with that loaf of bread, what's left of it. No, here's what I think too, though. I agree, and you're right. That's sort of what you hear year in and year out when it comes to intangibles and leadership. But I guess where I take a little bit more, add a little bit more of the credibility to it this time is that a guy like Will Anderson to me comes off as like a Rolando McClain type in terms of accountability, right? That 2009 team, I don't know if Rolando was as precise or as eloquent at the podium as Will Anderson is, but in the locker room and on the practice field and everywhere with that football team, there was concern when it came to Rolando and having to answer to him. And I get some of that from Will Anderson, frankly, and listening to him. And there's guys that get up there, and we've seen it throughout the years, as long as we've been around it, including some previous quarterbacks at Alabama, that they could get up there and say the right things, and you just didn't really know if you bought it or not, like if it was truly genuine and they had that confidence, or if it was faux confidence or that ability to lead. I don't get that sense with Will Anderson, and I don't take him to be a guy that is just going to sell that to the media and to the fans and to the public. And then once we get into late May, June, and then it's really about ownership on behalf of the players through the summer months. Yeah, I know you got the strength and conditioning staff, but that period, right, is as much about the players taking ownership as anything else. And between Will Anderson and then Bryce Young on the offensive side of the ball, and even some maybe non-stars like Kendall Randolph and some others, DJ Dale, it looks like might step up some on the defensive side. I think you can take some solace in thinking that between the experience this team has coming back and just the personality of some of those key guys, they're going to be able to maintain it.
Will Anderson comes off all business.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah. He takes it all very seriously. All right, the Talkin Tide podcast moving on. We're going to take a quick time out here and thank a couple of sponsors. We're going to start out by telling you about North River Dental Associates and Dr. Jack Smalley, that great staff of dental hygienists over there at 1100 Fairfax Park, right off of Watermelon Road, for all of your dentistry needs. Porcelain veneers, cosmetic dentistry, pediatric dentistry for those kids, laser dentistry, endodontics. They do it all. The popular teeth whitening services, you want to check that out. Also doing Botox and Juvederm treatments over there at North River Dental. You can give them a call at 752-350-6 for an appointment. Get in there twice a year for that routine cleaning like you should. Or you can visit northriverdentist.com online, make an appointment there. It's North River Dental Associates.
I'm going to tell you about Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. You know what's one day after A-Day 2022? Easter Sunday. So you need to go ahead and make those plans right now, not just for A-Day, but obviously Easter and those special baskets for those special someones. You're going to want to go ahead and fill them up with Peterbrook Chocolatier. Outstanding stuff. You got the great peanut butter chocolate eggs there, the traditional chocolate eggs. They've got the Peeps, whether you're a big fan of the Peep or not, they make for a traditional basket like no other. So you can also give them a call at 205-752-0211. The great staff there will walk you through the process. Peterbrook Chocolatier, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North.
Just a couple weeks out now at Easter Sunday. So got to get over there to Peterbrook and get that done. Finally, going to tell you all about our corporate sponsor. That would be DraftKings. College basketball fans, one big game left. Villanova, North Carolina for all of it. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook online. Turn your team's victory into your own big win. New customers bet $5 on any team to win, get $200 in free bets if they do. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN. Bet $5 on any college hoops team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. If they win, you win with promo code TPPN this week at the DraftKings Sports Book. What about that national title game quickly, Travis? What are your thoughts on that one?
Going to be hard to top that second national semifinal from Saturday night at the Superdome as North Carolina nips Duke and sends Coach K into retirement. Almost surreal that situation played out not once in Durham to end the regular season, but then again in the Final Four. So it should be a great game. I think probably, Chase, this is a perfect game for you. You still love more of the traditional big man on the block, and I think you're going to have that with both these teams. Both those guys, the primary bigs for Kansas and North Carolina, critical.
Kansas, I said Villanova, damn Kansas, right?
Yeah, Kansas. And so I think foul trouble in the post might be a big thing. I think the guard play, Bryce Love has been tremendous for North Carolina. But, man, if Kansas's guards shoot it like they did against Villanova, they're going to be tough to beat. I think it's going to be a great game. It's hard for me to go against North Carolina right now. They're a pretty complete team. I don't know if they're as deep as Kansas, but in terms of their primary guys, they're very connected and still very talented.
What do you think of the Maddox kid, real quick, before we move on to Alabama Pro Day and hoops?
He's been huge for North Carolina. When you talk about transfer portal additions, that's been key. I mean, I know, again, I talked about Love and the other player, Bacote, in the post for North Carolina. They've been great. But he's sort of been that X factor, and he can do it inside and outside. He's got some freedom to kind of get away from the bucket, but with Bacote in there, because he can handle a lot of that. But yeah, he kind of reminds me of? He reminds me of John Fulkerson of Tennessee, but with a jump shot, more range, right? But he does a lot of the same things for North Carolina that Fulkerson has done for Tennessee over the last 20 or 30 years, it feels like.
He's got quite an arc on that three ball.
Yeah, he does.
I'll say this, from watching him play in this tournament, and I didn't see a lot of him in the regular season. Wasn't even covering college basketball for most of that. But he's more of a liability defensively the further he gets away from the rim.
Yeah.
And I think I wonder if Kansas might be able to exploit that a little bit.
And I don't know, but see, that's where Paulo Banchero for Duke is a sort of a unicorn, because at 6'10", he can make a guy like Manick come out on the floor and have to guard him. And then at 6'10", 250, he can use the dribble to get to the rim. Maybe Kansas has one of those guys. I don't know. I don't know them as well as I know Duke. But you're right. That's where he can run into some problems. But man, he's been exceptional for Carolina, no doubt about it.
All right, moving on. Alabama's Pro Day this past week, Travis. We'll touch on that very briefly. Evan Neal basically tells NFL clubs, go to the tape. Not many, even first rounders, most of them, Travis, don't have the leverage to not do anything at the combine or Pro Day. But here Evan Neal. And good for him. He's got that. He's one of the few.
Yeah, don't take me. Leverage. Don't pick me in the top 7 or 8.
Right.
We'll see how that goes. He understands value, right? He understands what he has put on tape, and he understands the position he plays. He's not a running back. He's not a guard. He's not. Well, in some years, I guess you could say a safety, although the value seems to have crept up for that position. He's fine with who he is, what he's done, and it is, though, it's still very interesting, as you said. It's just kind of something you don't see very often.
Occasionally, but it's pretty uncommon for sure. Usually, even the best of the best will do a piece of these, a couple drills here, a couple drills there. Run the 40. Not many guys don't run the 40, at all healthy. But
no. Evan's probably thinking, I'm an offensive tackle, bro.
Right. Who cares what I
mean, yeah. Really?
Yeah. Although I will say this, the clubs are keenly interested in that 10-yard split with offensive linemen, which they get off of the 40.
That speaks to explosiveness and power. Yeah.
But Evan Neal doesn't need that either.
Look at the tape for that.
You know,
It's a different sort of era. It's just, it's interesting because it used to be all about the combine, and guys would at least do some of the testing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of the on the field work. And now they've sort of deferred it to pro days. And now even at pro day,
Yeah,
you don't know if you're going to get much out of
I think
these top end guys.
I think
Anyway.
we're trending toward fewer workouts in the pre-draft process, just in general. I really do.
Yeah.
I can see, maybe wouldn't surprise me if way down the road it's really just for the third day guys who are looking to prove themselves more.
Right.
So.
Oh no, it's going to be more of a mid-second through the 7th round type of procedure for a lot of guys. If you project as a top 30 to 40 guy, I would think in the future, I agree. I think more and more guys are, look, come on. I think we know this deal pretty well at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. Before we get out of here on the Talkin Tide podcast, going to touch on Crimson Tide basketball just a little bit. Travis Holt, the Alabama guard, goes into the transfer portal. Not a big surprise, given his minutes. Had a little disciplinary issue, I think, at one point late in the year. So if I would have thought he might have been the first guy in the portal, frankly, but he ends up being the third. And elsewhere, NBA decisions coming about. Shackelford says, I'm gone to the NBA. And, of course, J.D. Davison with a decision pending on the NBA. Nate Oates went on a podcast several days ago and said that Davison is I believe the quote roughly was he's on a lot of first round boards.
Yeah, he is. And I've kind of felt all along that his situation would probably fall in line with Josh Primo's from a year ago, where Primo went through the pre-draft process. And then when we got closer to that deadline, a couple of months from now, he made the decision to stay in. So I think it's reasonable to think that JD will do the same. Maybe he'll go all in. I don't know. But I would think he would take more of that approach. But Nate Oates, as you said, he was on that Field of 68 pod from New Orleans. And even he said, I can't tell a kid if he's getting guaranteed first round money, I can't with a straight face or with a good conscience say, I think you need to come back. So, where it gets interesting is for guys like Jaden Shackelford. There is no guarantee that Jaden Shackelford will even be drafted. That being said, Europe certainly presents some attractive options potentially. And there's the G League. I mean, there is a path to the NBA that you can travel. I've made the comparison for Jaden Shackelford to Quinn Cook, the former Duke guard who went undrafted 6, 7, 8 years ago, had to go G League for a couple of years. He ends up making it to the NBA, sticking for a number of years. So we'll see how that plays out for Jaden. But I think it's certainly more of a certainty for even J.D. Davison than there is for Shackelford right now, where the NBA is concerned.
I was a little surprised to hear Oates said what he said. Doesn't shock me that he's on the radar, but I don't think he didn't play like a first round pick. No. He's got first round athleticism, is what his size, his explosiveness, the way he can get up off the floor, all that screams NBA.
Right.
But not. He played well for Alabama. Obviously, a ton of minutes. I think he was fourth on the team in minutes, Travis, but the game needs some polish.
It does. And, this is a guy in his first year at that level. Yes, he played a very high level of AAU and club basketball, but he also played at a very low level in Alabama high school basketball. So I think you still see enough from him just in terms of explosiveness. And I like his awareness. What I like about J.D. Davison is, whatever you think about where his game is right now, he comes off as a guy who it really, really matters to him. And not just in terms of his individual development. He wants to win. Mm-hmm. I mean, I like his competitive nature. And so that's going to help him, I think, with clubs. Again, long way from a finished product. But I do think, again, in terms of dynamic ability and projectability, as far as a developer, as a perimeter shooter and things like that, and a willingness to do a lot of things that it takes to win, I think that works to his advantage. I think he's a first round guy ultimately. I think the draft process is going to love him. I think clubs are going to like his makeup, and then, as you said, his athleticism and those type of attributes are undeniable.
Elsewhere, before we get out of here, I guess just a quick note, kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Travis, regarding Shackelford and the longer, tougher path to the NBA for some of these guys who maybe go undrafted. I saw a report buzz by me today that the Detroit Pistons gave Braxton Key a contract. Here's an example of a guy who's I couldn't tell you what he's been doing since he left Alabama. G League,
went to Virginia, transferred to Virginia. I think he won a national championship with Virginia a couple of years ago.
Right, post college though.
Right.
I'm not sure what became of him, and then bang, he pops up, with a little shot with this.
When you saw Braxton Key, or at least when I did at Alabama, I thought, this is clearly as close to a pro, in my opinion, or an NBA player, not a pro, but an NBA player as Alabama had on its roster at the time. In terms of skill set, kind of reminded me a little bit of Grant Hill in college, because he had size and he could handle the basketball and he could do a lot of those things. He could shoot the perimeter jump shot. Assertiveness, I guess I would say, during his time at Alabama, didn't see as much of that. This was a guy who had the ability to take over games, and at that point just didn't really do it. Then at Virginia, it's not really on one guy in that system. But, for some of the same reasons, I think maybe JD's going to be more palatable for NBA teams than some people might think. When you look at him in terms of upside, it was always there for Braxton Key, but that's great to hear. I didn't know that.
Yeah. JaMychal Green still carving it out.
JaMychal's gotten a couple of big deals in the last 4 or 5 years. JaMychal has done exceptional for himself. No doubt about that.
All right. That's about the longest we've gone on NBA talk here on Talkin Tide, but fun jumping into that for a few minutes. Thanks for joining us here on the Sunday Nighter, the Talkin Tide podcast. We'll be back next weekend. Be sure to join us. For Travis Reier of BamaOnline.com. I'm Chase Goodbread, Tuscaloosa News sports columnist. Talk to you next week on Talkin Tide.